I'm now joined by International Monetary Fund Managing Director Christine Lagarde, and of course my colleague, Bloomberg Managing Editor John Fraher, with us as well. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time out to speak to us.
Pleasure.
So we heard yesterday from EU Commissioner Olli Rehn saying that EU governments will have to kick in with more money to help resolve the problems that we're facing right now. Is the IMF going to contribute more?
The IMF is in one particular line of business, which is to work with the country and with our partners, the European Commission and the ECB, on the adjustments that Greece must produce to contribute to a global package that will bring the country back to a debt-to-GDP ratio of 120 by year 2020. It's very, very simple from my point of view. The country has to do lots of things: structural adjustment, fiscal consolidation. It has to be stretched over the right period of time. Others may need to contribute according to keys that belong to them, not to the IMF. Our objective, and I'm riveted to that, it's 120% debt-to-GDP ratio.
Given the fact that the economy, the Greek economy, has been performing even worse than some of the forecasts were suggesting last year, do you not think it's inevitable that the EU and also perhaps the IMF will have to put in more cash to help it in the second bailout programme?
As I said, we are riveted to the objective. We are currently on the ground, working with the Greek authorities, working on the performance of last year, the last quarter. We're not terribly optimistic and positive about what has been done. There are reasons for that. But we want to put together a programme that works for the country. Financing will have to come along.
What more needs to be done?
I know you'd like me to say so, but I'm telling you that my objective, and I'm riveted to that, is 120% debt-to-GDP ratio, thereabout.
And looking at the debt swap talks that are ongoing in Greece at the moment, you've been speaking a lot about the need for public holders of Greek debt to also contribute something along with the creditors. Why do you think that's important? And can you clarify your position on the ECB? Should the ECB also take a hit on its
No, I'm not
holdings?
going to clarify any position, because it's not for me, not for the IMF, to actually decide between the euro area partners and other institutions of the Eurozone who is doing what, how much and when. You know, my concern is to put back Greece on its feet, to make sure that one day it returns to market and that it is not, you know, kept out of water by third parties.
Mm. Does it look as though, if we look at the fundamentals of the deal, the debt restructuring that is on the table right now, when you look at the details of that, will it make a significant contribution in terms of easing the debt burden on Greece?
You used the right word. It has to be significant, obviously. Yeah. Because you don't do that every now and then. You don't have many options and opportunities. So you have to do it right, and you have to do it in the appropriate level. You said it. It has to be significant.
And if it isn't?
It has to be significant.
And are you confident that when you look at the talks, when you look at the details of the debt swap agreement that are coming out of Athens, are you confident that will be enough to get the debt to GDP ratio down to your target?
My understanding is that negotiations are underway, and clearly up until now it was not appropriate for the Greek creditors, for the Greek to accept the creditors' offer. So I'm pleased to see that they're back to the drawing board and negotiating and working hard on doing something that is significant and substantial.
And of course, one of the key dates everyone's looking at is March the 20th. That is when Greece has a key bond payment coming up. A lot of concerns, obviously, that if we don't get an agreement on the debt swap deal, that Greece could potentially default. And my question is, does the IMF have a plan B?
Everybody has to do what they have to do to avoid that situation. You know, that's what I meant. Well, you're in the business of speculating and trying to elicit this, that, or the other.
But it is a
what
problem.
I'm telling you, and
danger.
that's a very, very firm line of the IMF, is that if everybody does what everybody has to do, and that includes the private sector, the official sector, the country itself that has to provide the adjustment, that needs to have the courage to, you know, get on the path and not get off track, then default will be avoided. But it's a requirement that people do what they have to do. That's the line that we are seeing. Okay, the rest is my business, and it's not going to be your business.
Okay, so but are there contingency plans going on in case?
As I said, it's our business to avoid instability, huge volatility. That's our objective.
Do you think it's going to become increasingly difficult to meet that objective when we look at a deal? Well, just Greece, I suppose, as an example. I mean, this was something that we thought we'd agreed on months ago, and now yet again, it seems as we reach a deadline, it's coming under increasing doubt that
it has to be back on track. You're absolutely right. It cannot. The programs cannot be, you know, off and on, off and on. They have to be adhered to, they have to be on track, and my business is to make sure that it is back on track. And we're doing that as hard as we can. We are on the ground at the moment with our partners from the Troika, the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and we will spare no time and no energy to make sure that the program is properly designed.
And looking at the bigger picture, the IMF is looking for $600 billion more to boost its emergency lending resources. You have, I believe, between 150 and 200 already committed from the Eurozone. How are talks going with the emerging market countries? Have you had firm commitments yet from the BRICS countries, from Japan and from China?
Okay, back to numbers for a second. What I'm looking for is a capacity to lend of $500 billion more than what is already available. As you know, the members of the Eurozone have committed 150 billion euros, which is, you know, not exactly $200 billion, but not far from that. So more is needed, okay? And we're having discussions, not just with the emerging market economies, with many economies, many partners, members of the IMF. And I'm confident that those negotiations, those discussions, those options that we're exploring will come to fruition in due course.
Do you have a time frame for that? When do we expect a firm commitment?
Well, you know, the sooner the better. Yeah. That's obvious, yeah.
Ms. Lagarde, I suppose the one thing that you keep on emphasising in this conversation is the need for everyone to knuckle down and do their job, whether it's the international creditors, the private investors, and also these individual governments. So give me the worst case scenario. What happens if they don't get their act together? Because, you know, you've warned about a sort of lost decade in Europe going back to the 1930s. Will we see political unrest, chaos, unemployment hitting frightening levels?
That's what needs to be avoided. What needs to be avoided, and I've said it and I'm happy to repeat it for you on Bloomberg, is, you know, for the Euro partners to focus on three things: growth, the firewall, better integration. And growth is predicated on fiscal consolidation, because that's a recipe for long sustainable growth. It's predicated on competitiveness, therefore structural reforms that need to be undertaken courageously. Italy is doing that, Spain will be doing it, I'm sure, and it requires the appropriate monetary policy. Now, it's not just about Europe, let's face it. Bashing a region is not a solution, okay? So other countries in the world have to do things as well. The United States, Japan, they have to anchor in the medium term solid fiscal consolidation pattern. No countries can be on debt forever.
Well, really good to get your thoughts. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here at this year's World Economic Forum in Davos. IMF Managing Director, of course, Christine Lagarde.